And now we're going to welcome on our first international guest of the day. Let's get him on the screen with me. Where'd he go? Where's Mervyn? There he goes, Mr. Mervyn Kennedy MacFoy. How are you?
I'm fine. And yourself?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm really good. So you and I had a great conversation yesterday. It was, I enjoyed it. First of all, where are you from? I just introduced you as international. So where are you from?
I'm from the UK, London. So that's
nice.
My accent will probably shift. So I'm using my British accent right now, but things like very often when I'm listening to people speak, I just take on the accent. One example, I was in Corsica and I speak French, and I was there for like 2 weeks or a week, and by the time I left, I had a Corsican French accent. So if you hear me shift to American, it's just because I just do this chameleon mimicking thing, which is like
I do that too. And nobody ever guesses that I'm from Texas.
Oh, there you go. You see,
I have been born and raised. Yeah.
I can't hear it.
Well, good. I'm actually kind of glad. I don't want to sound like a hick, at least, But I don't know if you heard. Did you hear the statistics that I was discussing with Jolene? Yeah. It really was interesting. But so we talked about the executives having just unfathomably low percentage of minority executives, below 4%, and below 8% are women. And that's so crazy to me. And that's where it stops. So you and I talked about that, companies like to make themselves look really good by saying we have this percentage of this race or this percentage of this gender, but they don't stop and say, but this is how many are actually in power.
Of course, I mean they don't. I mean, now this conversation having yesterday is like, I mean, there are very interesting ways that you can kind of, I think LinkedIn had did their how do you call it, their diversity report, and I just had some fun going through it and reading it differently, basically, like, and I looked at, like, the positions where power was, and I kind of did a different mapping, and I basically put power, how do you call it, quite a bit of power, a little bit of power. How do you call it? Less power, no power.
Right.
And as you move up, when you're at the top, what I say kind of like that kind of scale, you'll find majority men, majority white men, and a couple of white women. And as you move down, you start having the different races. And so this whole thing, like I say, that there's a big conversation. There's the anti-racist conversation, but there's also the colorism conversation. And I think that the one thing that people don't seem to realize, and when we talk about white supremacy, people think like, oh, it's the white extremists. I'll just give a few couple examples. If you go to Asia, right? Asian people will cut their eyelids, right? So they have the fold, right? If anybody's an anime fan and knows Dragon Ball Z, right? Japanese cartoons, they're all European. Right. When Goku, who's like one of the main characters, when he becomes a Super Saiyan, his hair turns blonde and his eyes turn blue. And I remember when I was a kid watching that, and I learned about the Aryan race and Hitler's kind of like, grand vision, and kind of like, everybody being like, and the representation of like kind of like the superhuman being was a blonde guy with blue eyes. And I was just like, this is Japan. Right. And so what people don't seem to realize is this whole thing of like, things like going back to the scale of the diversity inclusion, things get whiter as you go up and get darker as you go down.
It's true.
And that's the problem. That is a problem. And it's not, and even if it's a matter of like, as you said, if at least it was a proportionate representation of the population, I'd be okay with that, because at least you have the proportion of, how do you call it, the
percentages, right?
The mapping, but it's not even close. Right. So basically, what we see in companies is that basically the further up you go, the whiter the people are, the more male they are, and also and things like there's no trickle down effects, and also there's also the people don't talk about this. There's also the effect of homophily, which is basically like kind of like how people empathize with people who are like them. And this is the reason why, as far as trying to get companies to be more diverse, I think they have to be forced. I think there have to be laws that say like you have to have this percentage of people, because otherwise they don't think outside of their type.
It's true. People don't think outside. We talked about this yesterday, even just talking about left-handed people, right? And how there's a very decent part of the population, and yet every product is designed for right-handed people. And it's, which, I mean, luckily what you and I were talking about were simple things like opening jars and all, which is an inconvenience and that type of thing. But and that's still bad enough. But as it gets a bigger scale and you're talking about your income and your growth potential, it's monumentally a bigger deal. And people tell me, oh, it's an education problem. Well, let me run you through some of my more statistics. I got more statistics for you folks. So according to the U.S. Department of Labor, even when it comes to equal, so I'm going to do gender real quick because I know you're a big feminist anyway. So we're going to talk about the gender gap. Even with equal education, so with bachelor's degree, women will still earn 24.8% less. With an advanced degree, 25.4% less. Yep. With the age gaps, this fascinated me. Starting as early as the age of 16 to 19. So when you very first enter the workforce, and you don't have any skills, you don't know anything at that age. Give me a break. You're all working at McDonald's or something, making 10.6% less. Women make 10.6% less than boys. So these girls that are teenagers who have the exact same lack of skills as the boys who are teenagers are making 10.6% less. That is nuts. That is certifiably insane. There is no reason that would ever exist. And then as you get older, the gap increases. Yep. So the value, the idea seems to be from what I read on the U.S. Department of Labor, from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and just articles that I've read about the psychology behind it, people start to perceive that women's value has gone down as they get older, and that men's value has gone up.
Well, I mean, it's also, I mean, like as far as like I said, the patriarchy, even the whole thing, like in society, it's like in French they have this awful term that they say that men, how do you call it? Men as they get older, it's like to mûrir, and basically to ripen, right? Kind of like they mature. And women rot. That's a term that is widely used, like in kind of like in French culture, like, you know, les hommes mûrissent et les femmes pourrissent. So, which is like, it's just awful. It's an awful term. And so you see, it's a perpetuation of what we see in society. So I mean, like the whole thing of like kind of like, you know, I mean, okay, I'm 46, and I have no interest whatsoever in girls who are 20. It's like I haven't had a midlife crisis, right? But we have this. But there's this kind of what I say value add that the guys have as they get older, and means like they get older, like, you know, they have more money, this, that, and the other, and they can purchase. It's almost like I can purchase myself a young chick, right? And so in society, there's always this thing like, well, you know, if women are younger, they're kind of like, you know, they're more valuable, and as they get older, it's less interesting. And I think it's a perpetuation that's like you see repeated in many different spheres, and it's sad. It's what I say, how do you call it, backward, and it completely it leaves out a whole bunch of people who have tons of experience, tons of expertise, and they're outside of the workforce, and we're wondering like, oh, why is it that companies don't work? I mean, why is it like we can't find people? Why is it there's so many people out of work? And also another piece of research that's really interesting is the one where they talk about once you have proportional representation of women and men in companies and how productivity goes up. And I always like this one because I like to bait men because I personally feel that women are smarter than men. And this
I would agree.
No, I'm serious. No, hold on. But this piece of research shows it like without any doubt. And so you know, the piece of research that says that, like, you know, a man will apply for a job that he's not qualified for a lot more often than women, right?
That's true.
So I was like, well, when companies are inefficient and they're full of men, right? It makes perfect sense that when you add women to the mix, they're more productive and they make more money, because basically you're basically replacing a whole bunch of guys. No, it's true. It is totally true. A whole bunch of guys that are thereabout competent, right? Mm-hmm. With women who really can do the job, because women will only apply for jobs that they know that they can do.
Typically speaking, yes, that's very true.
And also when a woman gets to a position that a guy is at, right? And this is why I often say also to guys, it's like, we live in a patriarchy. We live in a system that is made for us. So like we're swimming, how do you call it, to the goal, and we're always swimming downstream, right? And we have all our male friends patting us on the back and even pushing us forward. When a woman makes it within patriarchy, it's like being a salmon swimming upstream.
Right? Yeah.
And when you have men trying to stop you getting there. And so for me, it's like whenever a woman gets to the position of a man, obviously she's way better than he is. It's like it goes without doubt.
Because she's fought harder.
She's fought harder, but she often has to be 2 or 3 or 4 times as qualified. And
it's true. And minority women, it's even more so.
Exactly.
It's 2 to 3 times harder. And again, according to the U.S. Department of Labor and my research also with Deloitte, is that minority women have it 2 to 2.5 times harder than white women.
Yeah.
And it's because they have multiple things. They fit into more than one prejudicial category, and what really will kick you give you a nice big kick and make your life more difficult is that on top of that, you have one of the non-visible categories of prejudice that apply to you. And one of those is to have a disability of some kind, or to have a medical condition or a mental health concern, or something like that. And those things will knock you down again. I have actually been let go of from a job because of my medical condition.
Which is?
I have one of my teen ones. I have a seizure disorder, and they didn't like that I had to take time off for testing. And by the way, all my work was always done. Nothing was ever left incomplete, not ever. And there we go. And it's unreal. It's really, really crazy to me that this stuff happens. And I know people that have hearing disabilities. We talked about that yesterday, that are constantly receiving discrimination. And even something as funny as I've actually knew a manager that refused to hire left-handed people. Refused. Just had this whole, he had a superstition about them. And just no, it's weird to me. It's weird to me.
Well, the thing is, because we didn't speak about this yesterday, but I was born left-handed, and I was sent to live with my grandparents in Sierra Leone when I was 2.5. And basically, when I got there, because they're religious people, they basically, it sounds really bad, but kind of like I was brought up in Sierra Leone. It's like I had a really tough childhood. That's just kind of how disciplined kids. But I was literally beaten with a cane, to become right-handed. And wow. because as far as they were concerned, it was the hand of the devil. So if you because Jesus goes up to heaven and goes down to the right hand side of God and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I was like, yes. The discrimination, what I say is rife, and I think that as a society, we don't think outside of ourselves. It's like we. And somebody if I mention doctor, I mention surgeon, I mention it's already in the name, fireman, right? It's like bus conductor. You think of men automatically because they're the only people that we see. And also I think why people are getting things twisted is because these things were brought up a couple of years ago. For example, if you do the search now, if you do a search on Google Images, beauty, you see the diverse types of beauty, right?
Yes.
But finding diverse types of beauty in Google doesn't mean that you have diverse types of beauty in fashion, right?
Right.
If I look up a doctor, finding diverse pictures of different types of doctor, Asian, Black, women, LGBTQ, might look fantastic on Google, but you don't find that same diversity in real life.
Right.
So And even, for example, me and my mother were talking about it yesterday. If you look at the BBC, there is not a single person that I know till this day who reads prime time news who has a visible disability. There's not a single one.
Interesting.
Not a single one. So they have a young lady who has one arm who does the weather. They have two people that have physical disabilities, otherwise abled, who are in wheelchairs or motorized machines, and they do programs, but nobody on prime time. And also another part of society nobody ever thinks about, how do you call it? People of small stature. It's apart from the last person that we saw, and I forget his name, who's in Game of Thrones. It's like, where are they? There's nothing is made for them. They don't do talk show hosts. They don't exist. They don't brush their teeth even. They don't wash their hair.
Apparently,
you don't see them anywhere. And
people don't talk. And don't listen.
They don't. I mean, and they just don't think. It's like, and because they're not exposed. Me personally, I've always thought like this, and I don't understand. I don't need to be exposed to personal small stature to know that they exist. I don't need to be exposed to them to know that I don't see them, on the news. I don't see them in adverts. I barely ever see them in a movie at all. And so it's all these kind of things. And if you don't grow up with them, I mean, I knew somebody who was afraid of people of small stature. Like she was like, she had like an actual phobia of them. I was like, they're human beings. I mean, it's like, what is wrong with you?
I have an idea that if people, I'm naturally curious, right? I'm a little sponge. I just love to learn from people and to go out and meet and have new information given to me. And if I read something, I go do tons of research to know if that's true or what the other side of it is. That's just how my brain works. But not everybody is that way. And most human beings only look at what's right in front of them. And that's their whole world. That's it. Whole world is right here. And so it's voluntary ignorance, which that's what makes, in today's world where we have the internet, ignorance could maybe be excused pre-internet, maybe. Exactly. But now you have no excuse, none. Get on Google and learn about some people. If you see something, if you see a news story or anything like that, get on there and learn. Have a conversation. I get on LinkedIn and I connect to people and start conversations just to learn, just to figure out, hey, what's going on in your country? What's the real deal? What's happening? What do you think about this? And the people who are brave enough to get on LinkedIn and say we need change, or Facebook or wherever, and say we need change. It's time to do this, and yay minorities and yay women and yay LGBTQ and disabled people and all that, and let's make everybody, let's give everybody an equal shake, and don't look at them like they're bad. Don't look at them like they're different. There's no them and us. There's only we. And you know what made me really sad is that one of my guests that was supposed to be on today had to ghost social media because she was getting death threats. And she wasn't being mean to anybody. She was just saying, let's love everybody. Let's have equality for everybody. And people there were people that hated her for it. And she literally had to go into hiding for a while.
This thing about like death threats, I find, and this is what really really gets me, and it's probably also the reason like why I'm such a strong feminist. The only people that get them, like, because I mean, people probably watching know Madison Butler. Madison Butler got them, right?
Yes.
The only people that I know who've gotten death threats on LinkedIn are women.
Yes.
Nobody in all the time, because I've called people out. Nobody, not a single person, woman or man, has ever given me a death threat. And for me, that's the whole thing of like the same kind of like that you see in society, kind of like, men abusing women, and kind of like, and also even LinkedIn. I mean, this is live, but I mean, LinkedIn let this stuff go on. Chandra Hardy, who's been removed from LinkedIn, she sent me 150 screenshots plus of just like torrents of just abhorrent, disgusting abuse. And these guys still have their profiles. And the things like, I mean, and the things like, I just don't, and the things like, these tough guys, so-called tough guys, I'm just like, if you're a real man, let's talk in their language, right? Like, they've got big cojones and like, blah, blah, blah. They're really obsessed with it. They have phallic obsessions and like, blah, blah, everything's about the size of their penis. Where is the glory in attacking, in between brackets, a woman? Because I mean, obviously, a woman's beneath you. It's like, why are you giving death
in his mind? Yes, in his mind, yes. Well, and also,
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
I think it's people that are threatened. They don't understand. They are afraid for ridiculous reasons. And Madison, if you don't follow her, I highly recommend her to everyone. Madison Butler, lovely human being. She has 3 of the categories. You know, she's a woman, she is a minority, and she's LGBT. You know, the whole whole spot. And the idea that somebody threatened her is unreal to me, because she posts nothing hateful, nothing ugly.
No. She got death threats. She actually had at one point, basically, I mean, there's this woman who basically did a YouTube video, and it's really funny, because, like, I mean, I find that people, I wasn't going to talk politics, but I have to. But basically, I find that people who follow Donald Trump, and who support him, they have his same kind of lingo. So, I mean, basically, she did a video, I think like a 30-odd minute video, where she was basically just like, you know, having a rant about Madison Butler. And the first thing she starts off by doing, and this is just reverse psychology, and it's interesting because we're going to have your sister on afterwards, who's a psychologist. But she was like, the first thing she said on the video, I don't want y'all to go after her. I don't want y'all to go after her. It's like, well, I mean, it's like the same thing, like when you tell people, please don't panic. What are they going to do?
They immediately start panicking.
Exactly, because the last thing they're going to remember is the last thing you said. Please don't run. Please don't rush. It's like,
and real quick, let's bring Michaela on so she can join in on this. Hold on.